Emily is my name. That is my own father, and I am 32 years old. Celebration of a 60th birthday. I was his worst disappointment, he declared openly in front of his friends and coworkers. Before I tell you how I gave him a toast, he would never forget using his own company. Tell me in the comments where you're viewing from. The celebration was just as you could have imagined. It was held in a stuffy hotel ballroom downtown, the sort with loudly patterned carpets that shouted old money and chandeliers that cost more than my vehicle. I tried to blend in by standing in the back and sipping a glass of sparkling water. The microphone was then taken by my father, Robert. He began by expressing gratitude to everyone for attending. Preening from the front table, he grinned as he complimented his lovely, encouraging wife, Karen. I must thank my kid, my successor, Ethan, for placing his hand on my stepbrother's shoulder. I'm proud of him every single day. The room gave a courteous applause. He hesitated just as he was about to finish. After looking over the throng, his gaze briefly fell on me. His voice abruptly became flat as he said, "And of course, Emily is also present. For this, she traveled all the way from Portland." Was that it? No. My daughter. No boastful remarks. It was really an afterthought, a social trivia question. The ensuing stillness was more oppressive than any slur he could have yelled. It was a dismissal in public. In front of everyone who was important to him, he hadn't just forgotten about me. I was eliminated by him. And at that very time, something within me, something that has spent years being worn down and depleted, snapped at last. I wasn't merely granted permission to carry out my planned action by that brief speech. I was compelled to learn why that one small statement struck me so strongly. You must realize that this was nothing new. He had been erecting a wall between us for 20 years, and this was simply the last brick. When I was 18, it was the worst. Before she died, my mother had saved money for my college education. That was the only way I could get into a decent school, my one chance to have a life that was different from hers. I checked the amount on my bank account one day. My heart stopped beating. $73.24 was the balance. $20,000 gone. I was trembling with a mixture of anger and dread when I faced him. He was unable to meet my gaze. It was for remodeling the kitchen. He had muttered, pointing hazily at Karen's new granite worktops. It's only a loan. We are related. I'll reimburse you. He didn't. I ended up working 2 jobs at a state school. Ethan attended an Ivy League university on Robert's money, but he was drowning in student loans. I realized I was alone at that point. As a result, I constructed my life piece by painful piece, in Portland, far away. From my small apartment, I founded Vantage Holdings, a small tech investment company. Coffee and a desperate desire to show him that I wasn't the letdown he perceived drove me to put in 80-hour work weeks. Which brings me back to the party. As Robert's words hung in the air, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from my Aunt Linda, my mom's sister, the one person who always had my back. I took it open. It read, "Remember why you're there. You needed to confirm it with your own eyes. Don't act unless you're sure." Did you find out more about that sterling deal at Linda was the one who had first tipped me off a few months ago? My firm Vantage had made a strategic investment in a mid-sized manufacturing company, Sterling Manufacturing. It was a good deal. Solid numbers. I didn't think much of it until Linda called me. "You'll never guess who Sterling's biggest client is," she'd said. "Your father's company." Suddenly, it all clicked into place. I had come to this party, not out of family obligation, but for reconnaissance. I needed to see for myself if anything at all had changed. So with that text buzzing in my pocket, I decided to do something I never did before. I stopped avoiding them. I walked right up to my father. He barely looked at me. "Thanks for coming." He mumbled, his eyes already scanning the room for someone more important to talk to. There was no warmth, no recognition, just a box-checked confirmation. "Number 1. Next, Karen slithered over a champagne flute in her hand. Oh, Emily, darling, she could, her voice dripping with fake sweetness, trying to mingle. It must be so hard when you don't have much in common with Robert's world. She looked me up and down, a tiny, smug smile playing on her lips. Confirmation number 2. Then came Ethan. He just gave me that look. You know, the one that's half petty, half. I'm so glad I'm not. You. He talked about his new promotion, the bonus he was getting. He didn't even ask what I did. He just assumed my life in Portland was some quaint little hobby. Final confirmation. Every fake smile, every veiled insult. It was just another nail in the coffin of the daughter I used to be. The plan was a go. With the city lights twinkling below, I ventured out onto the balcony for some fresh air. Before I did it, I needed a moment to gather my thoughts. A man who I vaguely recognized as one of Robert's business partners came up to me as I was standing there, accompanied by an older man who looked distinguished. Emily, let me introduce you to our CEO, Michael Davies. That's what the partner said. Mr. Davies gave me a handshake. He held on tight. He said, his eyes brightening with recognition. Emily Vance, Advantage Holdings. It's nice to meet you at last. I've been keeping up with your actions. It was a great move on your part to purchase the Miller patent portfolio last year. My blood became cold. In that room, he didn't know who I was. He was unaware that I was the daughter of his employee. I was simply a peer to him. A shark, he added. It is truly a blessing for the people at Sterling Manufacturing to have you on their board. That company has been transformed by you, and that's it. The final piece was that. Linda's rumor had evolved into something more. According to my father's boss, it was a fact. I was in charge, and I knew exactly what I was going to do with it after being helpless for 20 years. I went back inside. I passed Ethan, Karen, and my father. I went directly to the tiny stage and grabbed the microphone. Everyone's attention was drawn to me as a low feedback hum reverberated throughout the space. If I may, I would like to say a few words. My voice remained steady as I spoke. It was clear and serene. I turned to face my dad. My father was correct when he discussed his legacy in his speech. The most important lesson I've ever learned was from him. He taught me that every decision you make in life and in business has an impact. I gave that some thought. With a perplexed and irritated expression on her face, I could see Karen whispering to Robert. Years ago, I made the decision to move out and start my own business. I decided to start Vantage Holdings, an investment company. Due to a recent decision, my company acquired a majority stake and a board seat in Sterling Manufacturing. I stopped and looked around the front table. I witnessed my father's eyes slightly widen as the name registered on his face, and the decision I made today. After confirming that some things never change, I went on my voice a little lower, and it got harder. I was leading the board vote early on Monday morning to not renew the primary supply contract with my father's company, which is, as I'm sure you know, Dad, the only thing keeping your division profitable. There was complete silence in that room. I could hear the ice in someone's glass shifting because it was so quiet. Karen appeared to have cracked her painted smile. Ethan appeared to have been struck. My father's face had lost all of its color. He appeared to have seen a ghost. I want to raise a toast then. I raised my water and said that. Glass to decisions and their effects. I turned to leave after taking a sip and setting the microphone back on its stand. The whole room froze. I arrived at the ballroom's opulent double doors. My arm was grabbed. Robert was the one. His expression was one of panic and rage. "You're telling lies." His voice was low and poisonous as he hissed. "You're trying to ruin me. You're doing this because you've always been jealous of Ethan." I looked at his hand on my arm, then back up at his face. The fear, the desperation. I felt nothing. No pain, no anger, just a quiet emptiness. I looked him dead in the eye. "This isn't personal," I said, and my voice was colder than I'd ever heard it. "It's just business." A lesson I learned from you. I pulled my arm free, turned my back on him, and walked out the door. The sound of it clicking shut behind me was the most satisfying sound I had ever heard. The first thing I did when I got to my car wasn't cry. I didn't scream. I pulled out my phone, the sleek little device that I had paid for with my own hard work. I opened my contacts. I found his name, Robert. I tapped it and I pressed block this color. Then I found Karen block. Then Ethan block. It was done. The connection was finally permanently severed. Fast forward 3 months. I'm in my office. My real office. Not the corner of my apartment. It's on the 30th floor with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the entire city of Portland. The city that became my home when my old one threw me away. It's quiet here. Peaceful. The constant, buzzing anxiety that lived under my skin for 2 decades is just gone. Last week I had coffee with Linda. She told me she'd heard whispers that Robert's company was struggling, that he was being forced into early retirement, that Karen was telling everyone I was a vindictive monster. I just took a sip of my latte. Good, was all I said, and I meant it. I used to think the goal was to get a seat at their table to finally earn their approval. I spent years waiting for an invitation that was never going to come. Now I understand. The goal was never to get a seat at their table. The goal was to build my own damn table and then decide who gets to sit there. And as I stand here now, looking at my reflection in the glass with the city skyline that I helped build behind me, I realize I'm finally home. I sincerely appreciate you hearing my tale. I'm really curious. Have you ever had to make a really difficult choice to stand up for yourself, either in your family or at work? Let me know your story in the comments below. I promise I'll read them. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories. It really helps the channel out. Thanks for watching. Story 2. Hello. My name is Odilon. On the day I said, I do, my own mother remained silent as I mailed my wedding invitations with hope. She referred to the picnic pictures she shared with my brother as family. She wasn't only absent at my wedding, I was removed from the family tale by her. She knocked on my door with a luggage 6 months later. The worst thing, though, wouldn't be that, would it? Prior to starting. From where are you watching? Have you ever experienced exclusion from your own family? Put it in the comments section. Due to this narrative, it's not only mine, it might also be yours. When I initially mailed out our wedding invites, I didn't freak out. Carefully sealed, handwritten envelopes with gold foil borders. Although I didn't anticipate much hoopla, I did anticipate recognition, particularly from my mother. Twice a week, I checked the tracker again in the hopes of receiving a ping or response. Anything. Her name appeared beneath seen, and I saw it. She had accepted the invitation. Then there was quiet. I reasoned that she was occupied. She would respond, I told myself. Finally. Perhaps she was preparing a surprise, I even persuaded myself. But I knew better in my heart. When you stop making excuses for others, you discover the truth. I was unaware at the time that the quiet was more deafening than any scream I had ever heard as a kid. 2 months prior to that, I became aware that I was no longer included in the family group chat. I wasn't removed with drama, but rather just vanished, as if someone had turned down the volume on my life and hoped I would forget what sound was. I didn't realize how much it hurt. However, being silently wiped was nothing new to me. My mother was quite open about who her son Rose was as I was growing up. She would commend my elder brother Crosby for his initiative, even though he may have been caught stealing a petrol station. In contrast, I might obtain 2 degrees. And this place. That's good, sweetheart. When Crosby left college to join a startup, did you notice the essay he wrote for the corporate newsletter to honor his willingness to take chances? She arranged a party. When he moved back in after that startup failed, he only needs a place to regroup, she reminded everyone while preparing a roast for him. I was the careless one, even though I moved out at age 21, paid all of my rent on time, and never asked for anything. I had received a promotion once at a family breakfast, my initial title in management. I hesitantly brought it up. I'm proud. Let Crosby have this one thing, sweetie, my mother murmured, taking a drink of her mimosa. Give him this one item. By the time I met Reeve, it seemed as though I had been taking his attention just by being there. Other than a narrow-lipped birthday text and a flimsy Christmas grin, I had given up expecting anything from my family. He questioned me once, "Why do you always go quiet when I mention your mom?" after seeing it early on. I didn't have a clever response. We organized a modest wedding. Just a lovely garden next to Washington Park, some live acoustic music, and a small guest list, nothing extravagant. Reeves' folks were overjoyed. I got help with the outfit from his sister. His father volunteered to transport my aunt from Boulder. My mom didn't reply any calls or texts. I sent the save the date back then. The invitation to the bridal shower received no response. She read the official RSVP link when I forwarded it to her. Still blazing, but left there like a cigarette. I was first shown the RSVP system's backend by Reeve. A week ago, she thought it was strange. I recall feeling numb as I stared at the television. We removed her name from the seating list that evening, not because she refused, but rather because she remained silent. The sun rose golden and gentle on the morning of the wedding. Laughing over memories they were creating in real time, the Reeves family bustled around the site, fluffing tablecloths and stringing lights. I looked at the front row while wearing my dress, which was simple and had ivory lace. She was supposed to occupy the one vacant seat. The guests assumed she could be running late, but I knew I had anticipated it before I fastened my dress. Since that RSVP was not read, I had known. Since no one answered my calls. Since I became aware that my name was in the most recent group chat message. It was older than a year. Nevertheless, I grinned for the pictures. During the vows, I laughed. The bouquet toss seemed like throwing hope into a void, yet I danced as if nothing were missing. And this flawless, vanilla-tiered beauty with sugared flowers was there when I cut the cake. I saw that the slice that was intended for her had not been touched. I packed up that slice later that evening and placed it in the refrigerator with Reeves' aunt's spinach dip and any remaining champagne. I refrained from crying. My cousin Lydie unexpectedly texted me 2 days after the wedding. I'm not sure if this was intended for you to view. A snapshot of my mother's message from the new family group chat is attached. Our true celebration will be Mullen's engagement party. Not because I was shocked, but more because it validated my long-held suspicions. My fingers turned cold as I held the phone. I hadn't just been overlooked. Someone had taken my position. Reeve asked if I wanted to go for a stroll as she entered the room. Even I didn't believe it when I informed him that I was all right. I gazed at the ceiling while lying in bed that night with my phone next to me face down. I didn't feel angry. It was the gradual, oppressive pain of being silently removed. How long I had been looking at the ceiling was a mystery to me. An hour or more, perhaps? The room's lighting changed at one point. The chilly gray of a Monday morning fading into that golden post-wedding warmth. As I lay over, I reached for my phone to browse numbly, and Instagram opened automatically like muscle memory rather than checking my messages because I knew better by now. I tapped through tails, hardly blinking. Then I noticed it. Under the same beautiful sky, a perfectly planned picnic is laid out on a blanket with checkered white and blue designs. Plates of sandwiches, sliced watermelon, a charcuterie board with honeycomb and brie, my mother holding a glass of sparkling lemonade without a stem, and Crosby wearing a button-down shirt like he was trying out for a lifestyle commercial were all there at my wedding. His girlfriend, Zinnia, who was not yet engaged, was cuddling up on his arm while showing off a teardrop-sized diamond. The post's caption honors the people who are most important. It wasn't until the phone bounced on the carpet that I realized it had fallen from my grasp. I refrained from crying. Hours away, I stood in a white dress slicing cake and acting as though the vacant chair in the front row wasn't a message. I just gazed at the image that was ingrained in my mind, my family happy plates full. I got up, went to the kitchen, and automatically brewed coffee. The other room was still occupied by Reeves' slumber. He was not awakened by me. There was a part of me that wanted to sit quietly. Over the years, I had become proficient at it. I used to use fridge magnets to gauge my value as a child. Crosby and I were given this laminated progress board by my mother. Honor roll stars, spelling bee ribbons, and even a picture of him clutching a plastic trophy from a church basketball league were all part of his piece. A scientific fair ribbon for participation, a fading badge of faultless attendance. She once told me, "That's sweet honey, but Crosby just got MVP last weekend after I placed second in an essay competition." Then before mine had a chance to adhere, she affixed his laminated photo to the board. She referred to my first A in mathematics as lucky. She said that Crosby was intentionally controlling his load when he dropped a course. I felt like everything I did was a prelude to his big event. Reeve awoke later that afternoon and padded into the kitchen. Still in his t-shirt, his hair was disheveled. Leaning on the counter, he poured himself a cup of coffee and looked at my face. He knew he always did, but I said nothing. "They remembered Odie," he remarked quietly. "They just decided not to come." I nodded as its weight settled like a damp cloak over my shoulders. My fury was not present at that moment, only a token acknowledgement. Numb, I sat on the couch and scrolled once more. My cousin Lizzie, who had emailed me the screenshot of the group chat following the wedding, buzzed me with a message at that moment. My mother had written, "New screenshot, new sting." This isn't how things should be, even though Reeve seems like a wonderful person. Crosby ought to start. No, we're delighted for them. No, I wish we were able to attend. A little adjustment to the family story. One in which there was nothing for me to lead. I felt something when I gazed at the words. Reduce in size. My wedding. The promises. The chair was vacant. The quiet. There had been no misunderstanding. A choice had been made. A line is drawn. I clicked on my photo drafts and dismissed the messages. I have a post saved. A carousel of wedding photos was what I had been planned. The bouquet in the air, Reeve's hand in mine. The cake, the happy visitors. I gazed at the button for posting. I then made a left swipe. Press the erase button. I next accessed my RSVP spreadsheet, which I had meticulously created with each name, address, and status. I underlined everything. I also deleted it. Anger was absent. Not quite yet. Nothing except silence. Every message from my mom that began, "I don't know if you're busy, but Crosby wanted me to ask," had the same pause I had experienced at every Thanksgiving prayer when Crosby's name was spoken first. I strolled into the kitchen once again. A napkin from the wedding was still on the table. I must have taken one folded one out of the box and just left it there without giving it much thought. I took it up and began folding it once more, first from corner to corner, then repeatedly into a triangle. Where there should have been noise, there was a tiny, silent movement that filled the room. Reeve returned, pausing upon noticing me. "Are you okay?" He did not ask. "Or you ought to speak with someone. You're free to feel it," he remarked as he sat down across from me. "Simply put, you are not required to remain in it." I gave him a serious look, and for the first time in days, I thought what he was saying was true. However, I continued folding because in reality, I remained in it. It took me a while to realize the reality. Until the deluge arrived, it dripped steadily and slowly like a leaking faucet. First, there was a phone call. Aunt Nadine's name appeared on my screen while I was folding towels in the laundry room. I was hesitant to answer the phone because we hadn't spoken in about a year. I cleaned my hands, gave the dryer a little more hum, and cautiously responded. "Hello, Nadine." She spoke in a timid, quiet voice. "Hello, my love. I thought you should know, even though I wasn't sure if I should call." "What comes next?" She hesitated. "Crosby has been the subject of your mother's plans." I took a seat on the washer's edge. The heart thudded as if it knew where this was headed. Nadine went on. "In 2 weeks, they have a venue in Estes Park reserved. It is. Audilon, it's a wedding." "A wedding," slowly I said. "Crosby isn't married. I am aware. That's why it was so strange. Vera was already discussing menus and unique cocktails, but she added that it was just in case. Nadine's voice became softer as she spoke, and I could sense the humiliation in it. Because your wedding didn't leave a legacy, she added, it didn't really count. Legacy. That word hit me like a stone in my stomach because it was so cold and polished. I didn't answer. I was unable to. I remained in the washing room surrounded by towels and in quiet when the phone ended. The dryer's hum had stopped, but the buzz in my ears continued to grow. A flashback from 2 years ago slipped in. At Vera's house for brunch. It was only her Crosby and a few of relatives and myself back then. Well, you know Crosby is the last real heir to the family name, Vera had remarked while laughing over mimosas. If he gets married, we'll be lucky, right? I had shared their laughter. I believed it to be a harmless, archaic jab. It seemed like a plan now, though. I recalled Vera asking me if I would be keeping my last name as she leaned across the table. Following my marriage. She had poured more juice and continued, Reeve comes off as kind, but when a woman marries in a way that doesn't bear the same weight, things are different. Then, smiling warmly, she turned to Crosby and said, We'll have a lot to celebrate when you get married, baby. At the time, I had dismissed it, but now the context was painful. I took a little fireproof folder out of my desk drawer later that night. The deed to our house was inside. 5 years ago, Reeve and I battled valiantly to close on that one. Our credit was overextended at the time. Vera was requested to co-sign till we were accepted. What did she say, Odilon? Even though I adore you, I can't attach my name to something that might not last. I simply fear that you're moving too quickly. We managed to seal the sale on our own by scraping together what we could. No help currently without a co-signature. I had evidence. It was in my hands. Nevertheless, Reeve returned home from work that evening. The dining table was where I was. I was surrounded by papers that looked like maps of a battlefield. He put down his briefcase and looked around. What's happening? He inquired. I gave my phone to him. Another screenshot from Liddy. This one, which was from last week, came from Vera's group chat. She was very proud of Crosby and her writing. The moment we've all been anticipating has finally arrived. Odell was only a stand-in. Reeve didn't shout. Nothing was thrown by him. His jaw clenched with each word as he read it. Then he dropped the phone and turned to face me. He replied softly, They don't see you. They spot a barrier. You took center stage. Crosby was to be a substitute. I felt something change inside of me as I looked at him. Not melancholy, not even anger. Decide. On my laptop, I opened a new folder. Began importing all of the digital wedding invites, emails, RSVPs, receipts, and screenshots. I included pictures of the location, the flowers, and our florist's signed check. After that, I took out the printed deed, underlined my name, and printed it once again. Even though I didn't know what I was making yet, it was going to be sturdy. Even though Vera never phoned me after the wedding, she insisted on holding a Zoom call to stay in touch, so she organized a virtual family gathering later that week. I used an anonymous login. Just a dark square with the initials O on it, no microphone, no video. They gush and giggled over Crosby's impending moment. Wearing a cream-colored dress, Zinnia sat next to him drinking champagne as if it were her rehearsal supper. Vera's voice sounded artificial and sugary, and she was nearly shining. We've been waiting for this, she remarked with a smile. The celebration that carries on the tradition, the true one. I grinned as I reclined in my chair, still invisible. Let's then assess how realistic you desire it to be. Connected to the following chapter. Crosby wasn't the only one. It was about getting rid of me. Crosby wasn't the only one. It was about getting rid of me. As I stood reheating leftover wedding cake in the kitchen, that notion hummed beneath my skin. It was only a square of vanilla that I had preserved out of habit, not the fancy, multi-tiered section. I didn't feel hungry. All I wanted was something that felt authentic. A small amount of the frosting had melted and was slowly falling off, similar to how that day had unfolded. I hadn't previously allowed myself to mentally relive the entire event, not till today. However, the memory ran itself like an unstoppable loop once it got going. We were inside the reception tent with soft music playing in the background and warm light hung from the ceiling. The tribute video had been long overdue. It had taken Reeve and I weeks to put together. Pictures of us as children, our very first flat. He makes funny videos with his nephews. Even the haphazard selfie I shot on the day I was promoted outside the courthouse. When the microphone made the announcement, I was standing close to the head table sipping a glass of wine. Now for the newlyweds, a small surprise. I recall grinning. I felt proud, but anxious. Our love story was in that video. The pause followed. The quiet clearing of a throat, the laptop fidgeting. Apologies, everyone. The USB appears to be unreadable. Zinnia beat him there before Reeve could get up to investigate. Let's simply avoid it. She gave a chirp. Surely everyone has seen enough photos already. They all laughed civilly. The music came back. I felt sick to my stomach. I believed that to be bad luck at the time. It was one of those minor hiccups on the wedding day that everyone had warned me about, like a boot on the verge of coming off, or a name mispronounced. It's nothing to stress about. I'm not so convinced it was luck anymore, though, particularly not in light of the subsequent events. The reception is almost over. Fran Vera's closest friend rose holding a flute of champagne. Everybody tapped their glasses. As if she had done this 100 times, she lifted hers. We're celebrating love tonight, she stated in a sweet voice. And we express our gratitude to everyone present for supporting Crosby's and other family legacies. We are committed to creating enduring homes and upholding the names we are honored to bear. That was it. Not a single reference to Reeve or myself. Not a single recognition that it was my day, my wedding. They didn't even whisper my name. I saw Reeve's parents exchange glances. His father peered down into his glass as if looking for a crack while his mother shifted uneasily. Reeve simply grabbed my hand. He gave it a light squeeze, but his hold held. I threw the USB in a drawer and forgot about it the following day, or attempted 2 weeks later. Reeve took it out once more. We were tidying up and rearranging the wedding's belongings. It functioned flawlessly when he connected it to his laptop. The video was there frame by frame. The transition was smoothly timed by the music. The recording features my voice telling the tale of how we first met. Vera even made an appearance in a few of the early footage, grinning next to me at my graduation and giving me a hug after I received my bar test results. As it played, I took a leisurely seat. My throat constricted. I refrained from crying. I remained still. That was the part of myself she didn't want to see. I muttered the one she used to be proud of. Reeve was silent, but I could tell by the stiffness in his shoulders the way he shut the laptop after that. He believed what I hadn't dared to speak out. I assume Cynthia swapped it out. It's the type of thing she'd write off as merely a tech blip. The type of stuff you can't verify but you feel in your bones. I spent the next morning going over the seating chart. I had diligently crafted months previously. Vera had been listed at the middle of the family table directly close to Reeve's parents. No special food request. No problem with movement. Nevertheless, she picked a table close to the rear with Crosby and a few coworkers. For the majority of the night, her chair was vacant. One of my cousins later confessed while intoxicated via post-reunion messages that Vera and Crosby had left the ceremony to answer a phone call. There was a presentation for Crosby's new consulting business that involved rebranding. She had stated that she didn't want to lose steam. They assumed you would comprehend. I gave a nod. I always did. I began browsing through my phone while seated at my kitchen counter that evening. I chose picture after picture of happy guests as the cake's centerpieces, which we were never able to cut together. I pushed delete on them, one by one. Then I stopped, though. Reeve's sister had snapped a picture. At the moment, I hadn't even realized she had broken it. It showed me in the middle of laughing as Reeve's parents assisted me in getting into my dress. His father was clutching the train clumsily as if it were about to catch fire. His mother was fixing a pin in my hair with one hand while the other was resting on my shoulder. I was staring straight ahead, nor at the camera, nor at them, unaware, just grinning. I left that one intact. Rather, I gazed at it for a while. Then, whether aloud or only in my mind, I whispered, "That day they may have been my actual family." I heard the knock on a Sunday afternoon, not the timid type that begs for approval. No, this one had a lot of body, like a person who feels entitled to be somewhere. Anticipating a neighbor, I opened the door. A delivery accident, perhaps? Rather, my mom Vera was there. A tote bag on one arm and two hard-shell suitcases behind her. She unzipped but draped her winter coat. She had the type of subdued smile you see in the middle of a real estate agent's spiel. "Hello, my love." As if the welcome mat had been spread out for her, she whispered, going forward. "I intended to stay here for a short while. The situation at Crosby's is tight." I blinked. Nor astonishment, nor rage. Only a sinking, empty numbness that crept into my jaw from someplace in my spine. Before I could speak, she was already wheeling her bags in. I didn't stop her. I didn't slam the door, but I also didn't offer tea. I stood as though the voice of someone else had taken the place of my own body. Reeve was seated at the kitchen table as if it were her own by the time she got back from the food shop. She lifted the mug and informed him I brewed chamomile. "Is it still your favorite?" He looked at her in a way that was neither impolite nor kind. Then he turned to face me. I shook my head in the slightest way. She carried a framed picture of Reeve and me into the living room later that night. She grinned to herself and remarked, "I knew this place had potential." "I recall the time I assisted you in obtaining the loan." What a wise choice. Stunned, I gazed at her. No, she hadn't helped, and my throat constricted. Not by any means. 5 years ago, after a freelancing client's payment was delayed and my credit union changed their mind, I was frantically trying to lock in the property and desperately needed a co-signer. I gave her a call. I asked her directly. "I can't put my name on something that could not last," she said. "It isn't intimate. Stability is the key." That loan decision letter had been printed out and stored deep in my file cabinet. Her speech now sounded as if it were coming from another universe. "Did you not assist?" Finally, I said quietly but firmly, "You didn't." She dismissed it with a wave. "You know how banks manipulate things, don't you? That trip included me. I informed everyone that you were creating something unique. However, I didn't have to wait long to learn who everyone was." The bell was rung by Aunt Nadine the next afternoon. She arrived with a manila folder containing old tax documents, her face tense, her arms draped in a worn green blanket. She entered, gave Vera a chilly greeting, and whispered after me to the rear hallway, "We must speak." She handed the envelope to me when we were alone. She said, "You ought to see this. I assumed you were already aware." Then I noticed her vehicle in the driveway. The folder contained printed communications, including a sequence of correspondence between Vera and a lender with the topic, "Loan Extension Discussion Crosby Property." Vera said, "There it was. For the purposes of paperwork, we are using my daughter's house in Denver. It's basically one of my advantages. I got it for her. The address is within my control. I'd be happy to explain." I pressed my fingertips to the page's edges. "She helped Crosby by using my name," I muttered. Nadine gave a nod. Tight lips. "It's hers they've been claiming. She's probably done it before." Vera hummed as she washed dishes that evening. As if it were another night in the house she had always owned, I silently watched her from the archway. It was more than simply a home. This was the cause of all of my late-night freelance work, missed parties, and panic attacks during tax season. I owned this house, earned, fought for, kept up by sheer determination, whilst others would have left. I wasn't raised by Vera. To match her narrative, she created a version of myself. And now her loan papers, reportedly. Just as the light disappeared below the trees, Reeve returned home. He didn't inquire. My eyes showed it to him. After putting the goods down, he came right over and embraced me. "Don't let this go on," he whispered into my hair. "Never again." I gave him a chest nod. The lump that's pushing up in my throat. She was later adjusting throw cushions in the guest room when I found her. From the shelf, she took a little square napkin. I was unaware that it was still present. "Do you still bundle leaves in this dumb way?" With a little giggle, she asked. "I recall how you used to use them to adorn every Thanksgiving dinner." I carefully removed it from her hand. "That's the final one," I said. "When I stopped creating room for individuals who never showed up, I stopped creating them." She turned back to the luggage she had partially opened on the bed and feigned a laugh. Something inside of me stopped folding, so I didn't laugh with her. It was developing. She gave me a list right before I decided to let her remain. I was on the verge of persuading myself that it would not be as horrible by the next morning. Perhaps we could put up with one another for a few weeks. I had the impression that there could be a manageable version of this. Then I noticed the list as I entered the kitchen. A solitary sheet of paper neatly folded in half was positioned in the middle of the kitchen island, as if it were supposed to be there. I opened it up. "I go to Dr. Leonard to have my groceries refilled. Pick up the laundry. Concerning the roof, contact the HOA. I quickly glanced at the bottom line. And while I'm sleeping, please don't use your office. The creak is excessively loud." The happy face was absent. "Not a joke." "No, just a list typed up if that's not too much." A series of commands. Like she was in charge of the home she had put it there. I said nothing at all. Completely relaxed, she entered behind me and stirred her tea. "Oh, I thought we might divide things up while I was here. You've always had a plan." I didn't answer. She saw my silence as an implicit agreement, even though I didn't nod. She always did it that way, seeing my reluctance as assent and my silence as consent. Later that afternoon, I arranged old financial documents for my accountant while sitting cross-legged on the carpeting in the living room. Tax season was rapidly approaching. A black folder from the year I purchased the house was opened, mostly supposing it to be scanned receipt copies. Rather, I discovered a copy of my first mortgage refusal because I didn't have a cosigner. A notarized letter was included. Vera's. It was not a suggestion. It was not a reference to a character. Her statement that she did not want to tie her assets to speculative property was formal and icy. In black ink, she wrote, she was now sitting in the same speculative house telling people that she had assisted me in purchasing it. I placed the letter on the kitchen counter that evening after supper. Vera hardly gave it a look. Then when she picked an apple out of the fruit dish, she said, "You did well. Why are we resurrecting the past?" I didn't recoil. "You informed the bank that this establishment was not worth supporting. You're claiming it as yours now." "No one questions what I say," she said, nibbling into the apple, leaning against the counter, as if we were debating paint colors. So far. Behind me, Reeve had been stacking dishes, but she paused. His silence was palpable to me. I knew he had heard every word, even if he remained silent. Things worsened the following morning. Vera cleared her throat at breakfast. "I've wanted to inquire. Would you be able to take care of Grandma full-time? If it came from you, it would look great with everything going on. In any case, you work from home." I blinked slowly. "She's in Arkansas." "Yes, but she trusts you, and you don't have children." I was not even amused. I didn't even speak louder. "You didn't attend my wedding," I remarked, glancing at her. "You brought me up in your home, and now you expect me to tidy up your mess?" She pretended to blow out her breath via her nostrils. "Audalon, you constantly distort things." "No." At last I began to untangle them. She got up and walked out of the room. No retreat, no apologies. That same feeling of mastery. She always put on armor to protect herself. I stepped out onto the porch while holding a trembling phone. It was a clear afternoon. The air froze my breath. I gazed at the walls of the house I had constructed out of weariness, stubbornness, and a desire to show that I was not in need of rescue. I nearly convinced myself that it would be simpler to leave for a brief while. Then I recalled the flowers, the napkin, and the unplaying video. That seat remained vacant. The pain no longer raged. It solidified into resolve rather than resentment. I entered. Reeve was sitting on the couch with headphones in and her laptop open. I opened a blank Word document while seated at my workstation. I got to typing. Who should I contact about fictitious ownership claims? But I stopped before I hit save. Writing to people who were already aware of her methods and acted as though they were unaware of them was pointless. I didn't have to elaborate. I had to exhibit. I grabbed my phone, launched the voice recording app, and hit the record button. I hit the play button. After letting the recording start, put the phone face down on the table and entered the kitchen as if nothing had occurred. Vera's voice came back to me from the living room. Not the one she used around churchgoers or neighbors. The one she didn't say till she forgot people could hear. Odilon was only a bump in our family's history, you know. Vera chuckled. Sharp but feeble voice. Zinnia said that Crosby's legacy is the heritage. We attempted to raise her as a mistake. Correct. It failed. There was giggling. Close, smug, cruel. Crosby remained silent during the video, but it wasn't a defense. Complicity was involved. Aunt Nadine's voicemail from months ago had been buried in my mailbox unopened. In the event that you ever quit believing them, she had labeled it. And now I listened once again, the sound still fresh in my ears. Then again, I remained silent and did not cry. I simply sat on the couch with my knees up to my chest and my phone like a razor on my hand. I didn't have any buzzing thoughts. They were sharpening, settling. The morning was a Sunday. In her own words, Vera had gone out to meet a friend for bagels and early service. When Reeve came back from his run, I was still where I had been 2 hours before. I gave the phone to him. Without asking, he listened. When it was over, he said, "Do you want to send it?" and lowered the phone. I gave a headshake. "No," I answered quietly. "Together, I want them to hear it. Without control, without warning." He didn't answer. He didn't have to. We both knew that anger wasn't the way to go. It was about taking back the narrative. I launched my laptop and began creating folders. Property fraud and wedding falsehoods. The recording. Screenshots, papers, timelines, emails, and deeds were all included in each folder. I didn't write a revealer. I wasn't doing it for them. I was preserving a reality they couldn't twist. I was doing it to remember how long I had stooped. For those who didn't believe I was important. The monthly family potluck was hosted by Aunt Beth 4 days later. This time I said yes, even though I hadn't gone to one in years. I didn't dress up. Just jeans, a black sweater, and the assurance of someone who has nothing more to prove. No smiles, no cosmetics. The kitchen was filled with baked ziti and passive-aggressive praise when I entered. Vera distributed cookies that she hadn't prepared while she stood at the counter. She said, "It's just so nice to be with people who still value togetherness." In the corner, I noticed Crosby discussing his consultancy business. Zinnia was whispering to someone about a neighbor's divorce, already intoxicated from Aunt Beth's white sangria. I put my phone in the middle of the dining table, put my bag on the chair opposite from Vera, and moved past the buffet table. Reeve, who was already sat next to me, looked up at me and nodded when I hit the play button. Vera's speech caused the room to freeze. Crosby's laugh. Zinnia's. Poison. By the time the sound died down, nobody was blinking or eating. Vera opened her mouth but said nothing. She blushed a hue I had never seen her do before. She reached for the phone as if it might change the course of events. She growled, "This isn't how we deal with things in this family." I slowly stood with my eyes level. "You're correct. I'm no longer doing it your way because of this." Nobody gave a clap. Nobody said anything. However, a number of cousins got up and left. Perhaps we all needed to hear that Aunt Beth muttered as she dried her tears and got to work cleaning early. I made no request for an apology. I didn't turn around. The sole sound behind me was the clatter of cutlery, which at once had meaning as I left the front door with Reeve by my side. I didn't feel victorious. For the first time, I felt clean. I wasn't being swallowed by the stillness. It was preparing for the next step. I wasn't searching for a battle when I checked Facebook that morning, but it was there. Vera's post was like a digital ink smack in the middle of my screen. I started constructing a house for our family's history 30 years ago. I'm honored to be carrying on that tradition today from the house where our kids were raised. The attached photo is a wonderful slice of my house with just enough siding and a glimpse of the garden to imply coziness without showing any signs of myself. I read the comments and scrolled. You've always been so graceful, Vera. How fortunate your family is. Just one read. Legacy. That is the legacy of true moms. Like a sentimental real estate advertisement for a life she never experienced, she branded everything with family ancestry and a loving grandmother. And first, they accepted her. The HOA's quarterly meeting was convened at the neighborhood clubhouse the very next day. It felt as though fate had set aside that date specifically for me, even though I had already put it on my calendar weeks prior. Vera was already there when I got there, chit-chatting with the board president about how long she had been there and how well the area was maintained. She looked at me and grinned in a way I had lost recognition of. The meeting got underway. We read the minutes and exchanged updates. The member comments followed. I held out my hand. I stood up and said I want to make things clear. Steady. The ownership of 2429 Glenview Way appears to be unclear. I put a copy of the deed on the table in the community. I used my money credit and job to buy this mansion in my name. No legal document names Vera Lewis as the owner, co-owner, or guarantor. I stopped. Nobody spoke up. Here are the tax documents, the mortgage approvals, and the letter of refusal I got when I requested her to co-sign, in case you were confused. I didn't raise my voice 5 years ago. There was no need for me to, for the room had become very silent. Later that evening, I sent a straightforward post to the local forum that included the wedding tribute video, 3 side-by-side photos, and other posts about my property paperwork. Yes, the one she had used the damaged USB to sabotage. The reaction was instantaneous. Whoa, there was writing. You were the sole one weeding the flower beds, and we often wondered why. That video broke me again. How could they be so cruel to you? We appreciate you showing us. By tomorrow at 12 Haro. More than 70 comments were left on the thread. Individuals related personal tales of moms who claimed credit, sisters who dismantled households that pretended that treachery was custom. It was more than simply the indignation that shocked me. It was the type of insight that comes from experiencing reality rather than rumors. As was to be expected, Zinnia attempted to control the damage via a shared thread. It's sad when people use family as a pity point, she said. Your private life is a true reflection of your class. However, below was a response from Vera's old acquaintance. I was warned not to go to Oberlin's wedding by you. Avoid pushing it. The message is still with me. Then the screen suddenly broke open. There were screenshots after that. There was a leak of private messages. Old allies started to distance themselves. I gave to Crosby's company since Vera said the home was collateral, one church friend even remarked. I want to talk to someone about it. Within a 48-hour period. Her own manipulation was causing her decades-long facade of selflessness and dignity to crumble. I didn't cheer. I didn't claim to have told you. Rather, I got a message from a person I hardly recognized. When I was 7 years old, a woman used to teach Sunday school. I should have noticed it, but I was unaware that she wrote. The manner in which you conducted yourself following that wedding. That was true grace. I apologize. Something softened inside of me at that very moment. It was toward myself, not Vera. Because perhaps just possibly I no longer had to struggle to be seen. Perhaps I had already been helped by the truth. The week passed in a fog. I kept myself occupied by responding to emails from the HOA board, answering comments from neighbors, and even making a lemon bread for Reeves' workplace. As if it were nothing. My family had just been ripped apart by seismic activity. However, I heard it one Sunday night while folding laundry in the living room. It was a knock at something deeper, like a weight released from recollection rather than the front door. The smell of fresh rain on concrete filled the air as I opened the door. Over Vera's shadow, streetlights flashed. This time, she didn't have a suitcase. No umbrella, no baggage. Only her brown coat made her shoulders stiff. She clutched her hands as though she wasn't sure what they were meant to accomplish. Her voice was broken and soft. I'm at a loss for words. I remained on the doorway. I didn't grin. You did it already. I stated each time you remained silent. She blinked too quickly and turned her head away. However, no tears fell, neither from me nor from her. Our silence said louder than any apology could, and we stood there for a little longer. She wanted to speak with me. Only us. No posts, no cameras. I re-entered, leaving the door slightly ajar so that her words may pass through. I had no intention of hurting you. The situation just become more complex. I gave a soft shake of my head. Vera, this is no longer about hurt. Clarity is key. I need an explanation, but I've moved on. She scowled as if she didn't comprehend, as if she didn't think about the math. I never imagined you would become frigid. I looked her in the eyes. I'm not chilly. I understand. I shut the door after that. Just closed, not smashed. The non-resonant kind of closed. The sort that puts a stop to things. Reeve sat next to me on the couch later that evening. We remained still for a while, listening to the gentle rain pattering against the glass like gentle fingers. He looked over. Are you feeling better now? I pondered for a long time. Tried to find a term that wasn't untrue. Not much better, at last I said. Just finished. He gave a nod. With one arm, he drew me in while keeping the remote in the other, which he hadn't used in 20 minutes. That's the sound of healing. Oh, he said. We simply sat there. Don't speak, no TV. Simply breathe, let it rain, and know. Weeks went by. I threw Reeve's family a breakfast one Saturday morning. Pastries were brought by his parents. While I was arranging the supper, one of his sister's 2 children ran right into my kitchen. The young girl, about 7 years old, paused next to me and cocked her head. It's quite lovely. You learned that from whom I had just folded a napkin and she was looking at it. Leaf-like, gentle, carefully crept, an echo. I paused. Nobody stayed. Gently, I pressed the napkin next to her plate and stated that. But someone who showed me what it looks like to leave. She was unable to comprehend. She didn't have to. She simply grinned and hurried to get some orange juice. I sat with my diary that night, not knowing how to wrap up something that had ended so many times before. I choose to write the truth instead. My mother didn't just not show up for my wedding. She didn't show up for the person I turned into. But I no longer measure love by who claps the loudest or who posts the most, I said after pausing. Who turns up when no one is looking is how I gauge it. That was the problem of creating a life. You begin to worry about who attends the housewarming vows, milestones, and birthdays. But in reality, it's about who folds next to you, who checks the pilot light, and who carries in your garbage can when you forget. Just to be close, not to pass judgment. Shutting the diary, I muttered aloud. You may eventually be able to pick the family you create. I meant it too. Have you ever shut a door behind you? You finally liked yourself enough, not because you hated yourself. The quiet of those we used to call home can sometimes cause the biggest scars, not strangers. Someone is always eliminated when love is evaluated by devotion to a legacy rather than the one in front of you. Have you ever had your own narrative omitted in order to save the reputation of someone else? Please leave a comment below if this story touched you, and remember to subscribe for more stirring tales like this one, because it takes more than time to recover from family conflict. Truth is necessary. Story 3. My sister allowed me to cover the cost of her engagement party. Then, as if I were unimportant, she and my folks invited me back. I canceled everything and watched them fall apart. I'm Lauren, and I've always been the family member that isn't seen. Like the child in the background of every picture who's clearing up the mess or holding the snacks while everyone else is having a good time. Yes, I was that person. To be honest, it all began with the birth of my younger sister, Amber. Before she entered my life at the age of 5, I believed everything was okay, drawing on walls, watching cartoons, and receiving all the hugs and goodnight stories. I was just a child. When Amber arrived, it seemed as though the spotlight had been turned off for me. It was all about her. I initially thought, well, babies are cute. They require a lot of care, don't they? However, this was not your typical new baby things. My parents loved more than simply Amber. They revered her. "Look at our little star," Mom would remark, holding her up. Dad would be overjoyed as if she had just cured him of cancer. In the meanwhile, I was like, "Hi there." My mother would look at the dinosaur drawing I had drawn and say, "That's nice, honey," before swooning over Amber's spontaneous burp. Amber was the life of every family gathering by the time she was 3 years old. Mom would bring everyone over to watch her whirl around in a tutu when she started ballet. I swear, as I'm in the corner giving out cups of juice, every single one of my family has a video of Amber dancing in the living room on their phones. As I brought out plates and napkins, Mom would say, "Lauren, help me with this," without even looking up. The problem was that Amber was actually skilled at certain things. When it came to school plays or talent showcases, she was always chosen first. She seemed to have a natural ability to draw people in, and I was simply there. I didn't despise her at all. I simply felt as though I didn't exist. It was more than simply family matters, though. It was also daily life. My mother would say, "Lauren, take Amber outside to practice her cartwheels," before I could even finish telling my parents that I had received an A on my science report. "No. Hello. How did your day go? Did you do a fantastic job on your project? Go assist Amber, please." Then there were the household tasks, the duties. Oh my God. Amber probably had no idea where we kept the broom. I was responsible for cleaning any dishes that were in the sink. There is a mountain of laundry. Can you guess whose task it was? Mom was usually too busy bringing Amber to dancing class, so I started learning how to cook when I was 8 years old. She would claim, "You're the big sister. You must lead by example." It would have been good to be acknowledged even if I didn't want a parade for folding socks. Only until something went wrong did anyone take notice of me. Amber may have spilled juice on the carpet since I didn't keep a close enough eye on her. I was careless, which is why she could have scratched her knee. I'm not sure how I was able to take the responsibility for things even though I wasn't present. My instructor phoned my parents one day to let them know that I had been assisting other students with their arithmetic assignments. She must have assumed they would be proud instead. My mother just replied, "That's nice," when I returned home. "Today, did you remember to clean the restroom? I mean, are you serious?" The restroom. School was my only true retreat. I enrolled in as many clubs as I could and immersed myself into my academics. Anything to avoid going inside. To get away from the continuous, I even started going to the library after school. "Lauren, can you help Amber with this?" Amber, on the other hand, was receiving several honors. She kept trophies and medals, dancing contests, talent performances, and even sporadic painting contests on this shelf in the living room. She went in once. Mom and Dad would cheer if she even sneezed, and I would be perceived as unsupportive or negative if I mentioned it. I enjoyed sketching, so I recall requesting a set of colored pencils one Christmas. I opened my present to find a set of simple pencils. The sort of thing you'd find in a school supply box, In contrast, Amber received a personalized leotard with her name inscribed on it, as well as a brand new ballet bar. She may not have even said thank you. Amber wasn't even rude about it, which was the worst thing. She was nothing but a bully. She simply was. And everyone else behaved as if that was sufficient. There was no need for her to attempt. She was not required to work. Since she was Amber, everything was given to her. When I was around 12 years old, I recall asking my mother why Amber was exempt from household tasks. Mom simply shrugged and explained that her activities keep her very busy. "Lauren, you're good at maintaining order." That was it. No thought, no conversation. That perhaps I was also worn out. Okay, so by the time I was 13, I had essentially come to terms with being the family's sidekick. The star wasn't me, not even close. I was like a far-off planet simply circling Amber, who was the sun. It was unfair. What could I do, though? Then this chance presented itself at school one day. A trip to the state capitol over the weekend was announced by our history instructor. We would go to museums, the ancient courthouse, and even meet some local authorities during this large event. Only a few children were chosen. And I managed to make the cut somehow. I thought I might blow up because I was so delighted. I gave Mom the permission paper when I arrived home and began talking endlessly about how wonderful the vacation was going to be. Her eyes seldom left her tablet. "That's good." I said, she said. "Good," I said as if I were jumping. "This is Big Mom. We get to see the governor's residence and spend the night at a hotel. They even promised to show us the archives." At last, she scowled as she looked at the document. "This is next weekend, Lauren." "Yes, I am aware of it." She placed the paper on the counter and shook her head. "You cannot simply leave like that." I lost all of my enthusiasm. Why not next weekend is Amber's gymnastics meet?" As if that were the most apparent thing in the world, she said. "We'll need your assistance with food and costumes." She seemed serious, but I kept looking at her, waiting for the joke. "This is a school excursion, Mom. It's instructive. For once, can't you manage Amber meet without me?" She let out a sigh as if I were being crazy. "Don't be selfish, Lauren," Dad said from the living room, not even taking his eyes from the TV. "Amber needs you. Lauren, your sister has a bright future ahead of her. It should make you proud to back her." Feeling proud. Should I have been proud to sew sequins onto leotards and pack granola bars? However, I find this to be significant. My voice cracked as I spoke. Mom gave me a wave. "Next time you can go." The next time didn't exist. I would be in high school by the time the trip happened again, and it only happened every few years. They didn't care, though. They didn't give a damn. My students were shooting pictures in front of famous sites that weekend. In a packed gymnasium, I sat on a metal seat and watched Amber perform flips as my parents applauded as if she were an Olympic competitor. I felt like screaming. In the end, Amber took home a little medal for her age category. Mom forced me to snap photos of her holding it and beaming broadly. "Isn't she incredible?" Mom remarked as she prodded me. "Yes," I whispered. "Fantastic." Shortly afterward, Amber's gymnastics career came to a standstill. She went from the beam when she was rehearsing a difficult performance in class. I still wince at the snap her wrist made as she hit the floor. Mom took her to the emergency room, and they returned home with a lengthy list of the doctor's orders and Amber's arm in a cast. But the worst thing wasn't the fracture. Amber may never fully recover her flexibility according to the physicians. Competitive gymnastics was out of the question. My parents somehow made things worse, even though you would think that would have been enough of a blow. Mom was pacing the living room while crying. What will we do at this point? Her entire future was in gymnastics. Dad rubbed his temples while seated in his chair. It's a catastrophe. Mom barged in when I was working on my schoolwork in the kitchen. It's your fault, Lauren. I was so shocked that I blinked at her. What, you ought to have been overseeing her warm-ups, she remarked sharply. I let my pencil fall. I wasn't present at all. That's right, she said. You ought to have assisted her there. However, no. You're always preoccupied with oneself. You're sitting there doing your schoolwork as if nothing happened while this family is disintegrating. I was at a loss for words. I couldn't claim they never paid attention anyhow. Dad added more. Perhaps Amber wouldn't have been harmed if you had spent more time with this family and less time whining. That was the end of it. For a month, I was grounded. No phone, no TV, and no socializing with pals. I didn't have many in the first place. Schoolwork and my parents' continual guilt trips took over my life. Amber, on the other hand, made the most of her injury. With her cast raised up, she would relax on the couch and yell commands like, "Can you get me some water, Lauren?" Or ask Lauren to assist me with my schoolwork, Mom. I made an effort not to be angry with her. She was simply allowing everyone to take care of her as she had always done. She wasn't to blame. She was regarded like royalty by our parents while I was treated as the helper. However, that didn't make swallowing any simpler. The only place I could get away to was our town's peaceful and comfortable bakery owned by Mia's parents. After school, Mia and I would hang around there and assist with little tasks like sweeping floors or folding boxes. Scott and Dana, her parents, were the type of individuals who truly pay attention. Donna would inquire whether I had eaten if I appeared exhausted. Scott would nod and tell me, "Good work, kid," whenever I did anything well, even though it was so little it had great meaning for me. They gave me a sense of importance, as if I were more than a contingency plan. The problem is that my parents had the option to be like that, but chose not to. I was there in front of them drowning in their expectations, but they were too busy propping up Amber to see me. I gave up hoping that things would improve. If they hadn't already spotted me, they wouldn't. I was just going through the motions by the time I was 18. I spent as much time as I could at school, the library, or Mia's family bakery, and I didn't actually talk to my parents until absolutely necessary. Home no longer felt like home. Until I could find out how to get out, it seemed like I was stuck there. When my senior year arrived, I felt a glimmer of optimism for the first time in a very long time. Being admitted to a public university was the culmination of my diligent academic efforts. Although it wasn't Ivy League or anything, it was reliable and seemed to be my way out. In addition, I received a half scholarship. It was a start, but not enough to cover everything. I thought the best way to attract their attention was to wait until supper to bring it up. Amber was browsing through her phone as usual while Dad was slicing up some roast chicken. I moved the letter of acceptance across the table. I entered. I spoke, attempting to maintain a steady tone. Mom gave it a quick glance before turning back to her dish. "That's good, Lauren. Good." All I received was pleasant after years of hard effort to make this happen. Still, I pressed onward. "It's reasonably priced. A portion of the tuition is already covered by a scholarship I have. For the rest, I only need a little assistance." Mom let out a sigh. The manner in which she consistently responded to my requests. "Lauren, we're not borrowing money. I'm not requesting loans," I answered hastily. "All I need is some upfront assistance. I'll reimburse you in full. If you want, I'll even sign anything." At last, Dad raised his head. "Lauren, not everyone is cut out for college. It's best for some folks to start working straight immediately." Amber hardly looked up from her phone as she snickered. "Yes, perhaps you ought to have considered that before squandering so much time on your study." My hands squeezed beneath the table. "This is not a time waster. I've already calculated it. I'll graduate, get employment, and reimburse you. All I need is a little assistance to get going." Mom gave a head shake. "The funds are not available to us." "Lauren, you must have realism. Perhaps there's a job in the shopping center or something. Many folks manage just well without attending college." I fought back tears as I looked at my untouched plate. They had the funds. I was certain that they did. Both Amber's gymnastics classes and the countless art supplies and piano lessons they purchased for her after she stopped gymnastics were expensive. Nothing, however, in my case. I went to the bakery after supper in the hopes that Mia would be there. Before I blew out, I wanted someone to vent to. As soon as she saw my face, she realized something was off. She was cleaning the counter when I entered. "What took place?" Setting down the cloth, she inquired. I flopped down on a stool and filled her in. How my parents essentially advised me to go lost, how I got into college, and how I just needed a little support. "They don't even seem to care that I did everything correctly," I replied, my voice breaking straight, as in all the extracurriculars. It was unusual for Mia to be silent at first. Usually, to lift my spirits, she would remark something witty or sardonic, but this time she simply nodded. She whispered, "Hang on," and vanished into the rear room. She returned with her parents a few minutes later. Although I had always been treated with kindness, I wasn't prepared for what happened next. Donna, who was seated across from me, said, "Lauren." Mia explained the situation to us. "We wish to assist." I began to shake my head. "No, that is not something I can ask of you." Scott cut in. You're not asking. We're making an offer. We've seen how hard you work throughout the years that you've worked at our bakery. You're worthy of this opportunity. Donna gave a nod. We will pay for your education. After lessons, you'll work here part-time and you can reimburse us when you can. No hurry, no interest. What I was hearing was unbelievable. They were more willing to help me than my own parents ever were, and they weren't even connected to me. I began to cry, and for the first time in a long time, it wasn't because I was angry or frustrated. They came from relief. I went home that evening and packed my belongings. I didn't announce anything significant. I just packed a few suitcases with clothing and necessities in silence. On top of that, the admission letter served as a reminder that I was at last leaving. My folks hardly noticed me when I departed the next morning. Dad was already halfway out the door for work, and Mom was busy preparing Amber's breakfast. Amber remained glued to her phone. Going to college was like entering a completely different universe. It wasn't flawless. Most of the time, I had to balance courses, part-time employment at the bakery, and the stress of being broke. It was mine, though. I wasn't cleaning up after other people or taking the blame for things I didn't do for the first time in my life. At last, I could just concentrate on myself. It wasn't a luxury dorm, it wasn't big. Although my roommate Steph had a tendency of playing country music at odd hours and the mattress was rough, we got along just well. Like me, she was a freshman and we bonded over cheap takeout and late-night study sessions. It was good to have someone to talk to who didn't think of me as Amber, even though we weren't exactly best friends. Sister. Classes were serious business. Although I had always done well in school, college was a whole other level. Business administration was my major, which first seemed quite dull, but the more I studied it, the more it made sense. I was reminded of my work at the bakery by a lot of the lessons we learned about organizing, budgeting, and problem solving. I was only learning how to advance it at this point. In any case, the bakery continued to play a significant role in my life. I handled everything from taking orders to managing inventory while working there most weekends and a few evenings a week. I adored it, even if it wasn't flashy. I had the impression that I was making a significant contribution. Also, it was always enjoyable to talk to the regulars. There was the group of college students who swore by our blueberry muffins and Mr. Peters, who came in every Saturday for a cinnamon bun and a black coffee. Scott summoned me into the back office one day. My initial reaction was, what the devil did I do wrong? He handed me a clipboard instead of putting me in trouble, saying, Lauren, you've been doing a great job. We would want you to oversee the growth of our catering company. I was in full shock when I looked at him. Me control it. You're trustworthy, well-organized, and have a strong mathematical sense, he remarked. We have faith in you. I was at a loss for words. I had never been trusted with something so significant before. I promised not to disappoint you. I meant it too. Although starting the catering company was difficult, it also felt like a game changer. I poured myself into it, assisting with marketing, scheduling, and order management. We started receiving calls for small events, study groups, club meetings, and other things after I created a flyer that we posted across campus a few weeks later. It wasn't much, but it was a beginning, and every event that went well seemed like a victory. My lessons, meanwhile, began to make more sense. When I applied supply chain management and financial forecasting to the bakery, two formerly abstract ideas began to make sense. I used to think, oh, this is exactly like what I did with the catering schedule last week, while I was listening to lectures. Everything I was studying seemed to have a practical application which really aided in maintaining my motivation. Naturally, things weren't flawless. Sometimes I felt so exhausted that I wondered if all of this work was worth it, and other nights I hardly slept because I was completing an assignment or getting ready for a catering event. However, I would then remind myself of my motivation. I was pursuing more than simply a degree or a salary. I was creating a life free from dependency and without having to be a doormat for anyone. Things at home were far away. My parents hardly ever phoned, and when they did, it was just for brief, surface-level discussions. How is school going? Before I could respond to her question, Mom would start telling a tale about Amber. More out of duty than anything else, I returned home for supper on Thanksgiving. Mom was busy making sure everyone was aware of Amber's latest painting courses while Amber sat at the table looking through pictures on her phone. Mom said something that made me freeze, but I tried to ignore it and concentrate on the mashed potatoes on my plate. To ensure Amber can attend the college of her choosing, we have been saving for years. With my 4 covering the air, I gazed at her. Have you been putting money aside for Amherst College? Mom looked up, perplexed. Naturally, our goal has always been to provide her with the greatest opportunities. The greatest chances, huh? When I needed help paying my tuition, those same parents advised me to get a job at the mall. The same individuals who didn't care about my plans or grades. There was nothing else I said. I didn't think I could talk without going crazy. After finishing my meal, I turned off the noises of my family's laughter and conversation, which were making me anxious. Naturally, Amber appeared happy with herself, as if it were only fitting that our parents would give her priority that evening. I decided back in the bedroom of my youth. It's okay if my parents didn't care enough about me to make investments in my future. I wouldn't give them any more of my emotional energy. Our connection would be entirely transactional from this point on. I wouldn't act like their daughter since they didn't view me as such. Detaching was not as difficult as I had anticipated. My encounter with Mr. Wallace was the high point of my sophomore year. One evening, wearing a well-tailored suit that shouted business, he arrived looking as sharp as ever. He grinned and remarked, "Lauren Wright," as I rung up his order, which included his typical coffee and muffin. I blinked. "Yes, I am that." He gave a nod. "You've done a fantastic job here. I've been seeing how efficiently everything operates here, and it's amazing. Regards." A little flustered, I said. "But it's a team effort." "Yet," he responded, passing his card to me. "At my company, we are constantly searching for intelligent, diligent individuals. When you graduate, call me if you're interested." With my thoughts racing, I slipped the card into my pocket. Although I wanted to seize the chance immediately, I reminded myself that I still had 2 years of education remaining. Still, I felt like all I'd been striving for had been validated when someone like him recognized my ability. I repaid every dime of the tuition loans I received from Scott and Donna at the conclusion of my sophomore year. Knowing that I had fulfilled my commitment for so long made it feel fantastic to give them that last check. I had been attempting to show my value to my parents in an attempt to get their approval, but I had come to the realization that I didn't need it. It was sufficient that I have individuals in my life who recognized my worth. I was cruising by the time I started my junior year. Not in a simple manner. Although my life was still hectic and draining, I had settled into a routine. The classes were going nicely. The prospect of a genuine future didn't seem so distant anymore, and I was earning a respectable living at the bakery. That's why I was surprised one evening when my folks phoned. Something urged me to take it up even though I considered ignoring it. I responded, "Hello, Mom," preparing myself for whatever Amber-related news was about to arrive. "Oh, Lauren," she replied, sounding as though she had been sobbing. "We must speak." I felt sick to my stomach. "What's happening? It's simply—" She let out a deep sigh. "You're in a hard spot right now since your dad made some poor investments. We're having trouble paying the bills." Unsure of what to say, I blinked. Neither of my parents had ever acknowledged that they were having difficulties. "That's unfortunate to hear." With caution, I said, "We hoped you could assist us." "Quickly," she said, "only until we are able to stand again. We know you're doing well today, and you've always been so responsible." It was there. They had no interest in my well-being or the experiences that led me to this place. All they wanted from me was something. "What sort of assistance are you referring to?" Trying to seem unbiased, I asked. "Perhaps you could get us a credit card," she said. "Just a little point to make. Utilities and groceries. Nothing fancy, of course." I sat there looking at my desk's pile of textbooks. After everything they had done to me, they had the audacity to ask for money. At the same time, though, I considered what saying no might entail. No longer was it about Amber or their decisions. I had to make a decision about whether or not I wanted to be involved in their lives. Okay, I said at last, but there will be restrictions. One $500 per month and nothing else. Utilities, groceries, and necessities alone. Oh, I'm very grateful, dear, Mom cried. How much this means to us is beyond your comprehension. Her tone of thanks seemed sincere, but I refrained from becoming overconfident. I anticipated this outcome. The card was easy to set up. I connected it to my account, but I kept a careful eye on it. The initial months were fairly successful. Small groceries, petrol, and the odd mid-range restaurant meal were the charges. Nothing ostentatious. I briefly believed that perhaps this time will be different. Mom began to contact more frequently, generally, to inform me on their spending. She would add, "We're keeping it really modest. Only the essentials." I didn't talk much, but occasionally the conversations would stray into her typical updates about Amber. I didn't mind that our connection had devolved into a transactional one. Naturally, Amber wasn't very happy about my participation. Lauren must know everything, but why? On one of Mom's calls, I heard her snap, "Why don't you let me take care of it? You're not even employed." Mom retaliated. Listening to them quarrel was one of the rare occasions when I felt a tiny feeling of accomplishment. As the months stretched into a year, I began to relax my control. I hardly saw the money leave my account, and the charges remained constant. I wasn't having any difficulties. In addition, I was still holding Mr. Wallace's business card in my wallet, anticipating graduation. The first warning sign appeared on a random Tuesday, though, so I suppose I allowed myself to get overconfident. As I did each month, I was looking over my credit card account when I saw a $600 charge from a boutique clothes store. I contacted my mother right away. "What is this? Oh," she responded, as if it were no great issue. "That's just a little something for Amber." She had an occasion where she required a new dress. I squeezed my nasal bridge. "This card isn't for clothing, Mom. It's for needs. This weekend, she will meet Ryan's parents. Mom said she needs to leave a positive impression." Amber's new boyfriend was Ryan, the most recent in a lengthy sequence. It captivated my parents. Mom's constant gushing told me that he was from a wealthy family that owned luxury auto dealerships, but I had never met him. I simply ignored it. It was like entering another planet when I started working at Mr. Wallace's business after graduating. It wasn't stuffy, but it was corporate. They provided me meaningful work, valued my opinions, and compensated me more than I ever would have imagined. In my life, for the first time. I wasn't barely getting by. I had the money to buy wonderful things, even a stylish small apartment in the city, a dependable automobile, and brand new clothing that weren't from the sale store. Naturally, word reached my parents. Not even a week after I started working, Mom called. Her voice was very lovely. It nearly caused my teeth to ache. "We're very proud of you, Lauren, honey. An important position at such a reputable organization. We always knew you would succeed." "Skeptical," I said. By now, I would be able to read between the lines. She went on, her voice taking on that phony, casual tone that always hinted at trouble. "We've just been thinking. Perhaps we might raise the card limit a little bit now that you're doing so well. For emergencies, you know." "To what extent is a little?" I inquired already, fearing the response. "Well, don't you think $2,500 is reasonable? Amber painting programs are not inexpensive, and groceries are becoming more costly." It was there. It had nothing to do with utilities or food. Amber was the subject. Amber was constantly at the center. "No," I responded bluntly. Mom gave me a tense laugh as if I were kidding. "Lauren, stop being so frugal. Now you're making a lot of money. We are related." "Exactly," I answered. "I'm already giving you $1,500 a month because of this. For needs, that is more than sufficient." She didn't disagree directly, but when she answered, "All right, if that's how you feel," I could hear the disappointment in her voice. That seemed to be the end of it. However, the entitlement merely increased. All of a sudden, every phone conversation focused on how pleased they were of me and how much I was prospering. Some not-so-subtle clues about what else I could do for them always followed. it didn't stop. They viewed my accomplishment as their own. Their money is my money. They presented whatever they want as an investment in Amber's future. And each time I turn it off. No, Mother. I'm sorry, Father. The budget does not include it. I've done more than enough already. They obviously didn't enjoy hearing it, but I didn't mind. I had been their doormat all my life, and I had no intention of changing. I should have anticipated the betrayal by the time it occurred. How many opportunities can you give someone before they reveal their true selves to you? However, I didn't anticipate it to be this horrible despite everything. Every absurd request, every guilt trip. It began with a picture. I was at work looking over reports when a notification buzzed on my phone. Amber's instant accomplishment, or posing in an expensive suit. However, this one drew my attention since even for her it was quite extravagant. Engaged, blessed to celebrate with family in Monaco, was the caption. So appreciative. First, hashtag the family. The image was awful. Amber was around a man I thought was Ryan while she stood on the deck of an opulent boat. My parents were also present. They were beaming as if they had won the lotto. In addition, I didn't identify two other individuals. Ryan's parents, most likely. Pure Monaco glistening blue waters, elegant boats, and the type of architecture you only see in movies served as the backdrop. As I continued to read the message, I felt sick to my stomach. Piecing things together didn't take long. They were celebrating Amber and Ryan's engagement by traveling to Monaco for a week. Ryan, his family Amber, and my parents all live in one of the priciest areas on the planet. What's the best part? My money had been used for everything. It was confirmed by a simple check of my banking app. 6-person first-class tickets cost $1,800 to $1,000 each. A week's yacht hire costs $25,000. Private tours to Monte Carlo spa treatments and dinners at restaurants with Michelin stars. The total came to more than $50,000. It seemed unbelievable to me. They used the card I gave them to pay for food and utilities to finance a fantastic trip to Monaco, to which I was not even invited. I contacted my mother right away. On the second ring, she responded in a gratingly cheerful tone. "Hello, dear. How is work going?" "You're where, trying to speak steadily?" I asked. A pause occurred. In the background, I could hear waves and soft music. "Well, we're simply taking a brief respite. You are aware of how difficult the recent events have been." I gave a brief break. "You're spending my money in Monaco with Ryan's family." It was deafeningly quiet on her end. She mumbled at last. "Don't be theatrical, Lauren." "Is it dramatic?" Now my voice was trembling. The card was maxed out. "You went on a trip to which I wasn't even invited and spent more than $50,000 without telling me." On the defensive, she responded, "You didn't have to be here. It has to do with Ryan and Amber. It's their time. Pause for anything. Perhaps we would include you if you weren't constantly so resentful. To be honest, though, you don't belong here. It's awkward because of you." My mouth fell open. Uncomfortable. "You're even traveling because of me. Without me, you wouldn't be able to afford this." "Exactly," answered Amber icily. "You're just good at that. You don't belong to this family. All you are is a wallet." Before I could reply, the line died. Anger and incredulity tightened my chest as I gazed at my phone. The money was no longer the only consideration. It had to do with the fact that they didn't even consider me a person. I was only a tool that they could utilize and then throw away. My hands trembled as I clicked through the banking app once more. A burden was lifted off my shoulders. I canceled the private excursions, the spa appointments, the Michelin-starred dinners, and the boat rental first. At last, I canceled their flights back. I continued after that. To ensure they couldn't charge me another dime, I completely deleted the card. The ramifications quickly began to occur. Within an hour, my phone exploded.